All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started here. Thank you all for joining us for our first Titan Talk of the 2023 year, which will feature the latest on Titan athletics. A few housekeeping notes before we begin. You are viewing today's webinar as an audience member, and therefore you do not have the ability to turn on your video or your microphone, but questions are encouraged and they can be submitted through the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. And there will be dedicated time at the end of the presentation to answer your questions. If you have any technical issues, you can reach out to the Office of Alumni Engagement at 309-556-3145 or by email at iwualum@iwu.edu. A recording of today's webinar will be available to view on the Office of Alumni Engagement YouTube page, and you will be sent a link and a short survey tomorrow afternoon. At this time, I am pleased to introduce our two presenters. First being Mike Wagner. He became the athletic director at Illinois Wesleyan University in 2015. And a fun fact, he is only the third IWU athletic director in the last 68 years, following Jack Hornberger, class of 36, and Denny Bridges, class of 61. Wagner, who began working at Illinois Wesleyan in 1992, spent his first 16 years at the university as an assistant football coach, the coordinator of strength training, associate athletic director and event coordinator, and a facility director at the Shirk Center Athletic Complex. He has served as the chair of the Bloomington Normal Sports Commission Advisory Board, which he represents Illinois Wesleyan and the community in attracting and retaining athletic events for the area, and serves as on a number of campus committees as well. He is a native of Wildwood, Illinois, and a graduate of Gurney Warren Township High School. And Warren graduated in 1992 from Augustana College in Rock Island, Illinois, with a bachelor's degree in biology, which I'm sure he puts to great use here in Titan athletics. Wagner won 4 letters in football at Augustana and earned an honorable mention All-American status from Don Hanson's Football Gazette as a senior in 1991. And that same year, he was an all-college Conference of Illinois and Wisconsin linebacker for the Vikings, and the teams he played on won 3 CCIW titles, and he also appeared in 3 NCAA Division III playoffs. Mike and his wife, Beth, are parents to Rebecca and Matthew. Our second presenter is Tony Bankston, class of 1991. A former Titan soccer letterman and head coach, he became the school's associate athletic director and the director of the Shirk Center Athletic Complex in 2015. Besides managing the athletic facilities and events, Bankston's responsibilities include fundraising, alumni relations, and recruitment, as well as the marketing and promotion of IWU athletic events. In his 6 seasons as the Illinois Wesleyan's women's soccer coach, Bankston had a 61, 44, and 3 overall record and a 14, 17, and 1 mark in the College Conference of Illinois and Wisconsin, or the CCIW. He began working as an admissions counselor in July of 1992 and became the acting dean of admissions in October of 2005, and he assumed that role in May of 2006. Bankston graduated from Illinois Wesleyan with a double major in English and history, competed in the varsity soccer as a student, and was active in the WESN FM radio, campus literary magazines, and intramural sports. He also volunteered as IWU's football public address announcer for several years, and he hosted the Titan Coaches Corner show on cable television. A graduate of Belleville, Illinois, Alphoff High School, Bankston is married to Kim, also an IWU alum, class of 1996, and they have 4 daughters here in Bloomington Normal. But I'm going to turn it to you. Enough of me.
All right. Well, thank you, Kaylee. And it's definitely our pleasure to be presenting to everyone today and kind of going through the history of at least the last 30 years of Titan athletics. And really, we chose the last 30 years, as you can see on the slide there, is because a couple of reasons. One, that's when Tony and I both started working here at Illinois Wesleyan, was a little over 30 years ago. And it really was, it was the pre-Shirk Center era. And you'll see it throughout many of these slides of what the Shirk Center has meant to the university and especially to Titan athletics. And, you know, it was a great vision, you know, by the Shirk family and Coach Hornberger and Coach Bridges, both Russell and Betty Shirk, and then Jim Shirk, and again, the whole family on building a facility that at the time we felt like, you know, would be a 50-year-old facility. And as you see, our growth probably exceeded a little bit faster than what we thought, but we'll get through that. And that's kind of the reasons why we chose the last 30 years. To be at Illinois Wesleyan and to be a part of such a great community overall, that we do have a strong tradition of success, and just longevity in a lot of our coaches and programs. But the success is not only on the field of play, but also in the classroom. And then also our students and our student athletes have also done very well and given back to the community, which we are also very, very proud of. We want to kind of just show the growth of athletics over the years. And again, going back to 1992-93, we had 323 rostered student athletes. And we'll go over some of the sports here in a minute and how many of those were. But, about every decade or so, we've added about 100 new student athletes through various reasons, increased squad sizes for individual sports, but also just the number of sports that we have added over the years has increased, and then which obviously puts a strain on facilities and having to grow that, and then also coaches and support staff. And you'll kind of see some of the history here as we go to the next slide. In comparison to the campus enrollment back in 92-93, student athletes were only about 18% of the student body. And then as we go down to the current 22-23, over 41%. And we hope that number goes down a little bit as our enrollment increases. But we do hope to continue to add numbers to our squad sizes, and then also, as you'll see, some additional sports that we'll be adding here in the near future.
I think one thing, if I'll jump in here, Mike, for those to understand the national trend of what's going on with enrollment, and especially enrollment at small colleges and universities across the country, but there is a dramatic demographic shrinkage of college-bound students. You have the same number of colleges, not as many as there used to be, but still a large number of colleges that are looking for more and more students. So even institutions that might already have 35, 40, 50,000 students, they're looking for even more. That has increased the amount, the degree of competition amongst even small colleges and universities for the students that are available. At the same time, we've obviously seen tremendous growth in athletic participation in the United States as well. And so that jump from 18% to 41% of the student population is pretty dramatic, but it's a combination of those two factors. We've certainly seen the effect that Title IX has had on female participation in athletics, which we're very proud of, and we'll touch on that in a couple other aspects of the presentation today. But more female participation, more youth participation, the growth and emergence of different and new sports across the country. The opportunity for more and more high school level athletes to receive the type of training and preparation that makes them good candidates for participating at the collegiate level. All of that has really exploded in the last 15 to 25 years. So certainly the lower enrollment at Illinois Wesleyan University has quite a bit to do with the higher percentage, but the growth in student athletes, along with the number of sports we're adding, but also the interest that we see for prospective students of Illinois Wesleyan who want athletics to be a part of their continuing college story, once they move on past high school.
Yeah, well said. And here's the little slide of just the growth of what we've been able to offer, since 1992-93. We only had 9 men and 7 women's sports back in that first, and we're able to add women's soccer, which as Kaylee alluded to, Tony started our women's soccer program back in 94, 95 as he took over the men's program at that time. And then we also added women's golf in 96, 97, continued with those 18 sports through 2012, 13, and then slowly started adding some additional opportunities for students and student athletes to attend Illinois Wesleyan and give them the opportunity to play the sport they love and attend such a great institution by adding men's lacrosse, women's lacrosse, men's volleyball, and then women's volleyball as well. So now
women's bowling, man.
I'm sorry, women's bowling. Yeah, women's volleyball was a long time ago. Sorry about that. Men's volleyball and women's bowling, and both those added a few years ago now, and in their third year and doing very well. The future here, we are looking to add, and has been announced that we're going to be adding men's and women's wrestling starting in the fall, and we're in the process right now of hiring coaches and getting facilities for practice and then competition, which I'm excited about in both those fronts. And we're making great progress on that, and have been blown away, to be honest, by the outpouring of support and from both alums that wrestled on the men's side back in the 70s and 80s, and then also just the new excitement that's being generated in the community as Illinois Wesleyan will be the only school in Bloomington Normal or in the surrounding area that will be offering wrestling at the collegiate level, with the closest school being Decatur with Milliken down there. And then we'll be looking to add another sport opportunities for women in athletics, and that'll be either stunt or acrobatics tumbling the following year, based on what the conference decides to do with that. With the growth of the numbers, as you saw earlier, with our student athlete population, more than doubling since the early 90s. We try and make sure that we're helping our students, be able to help them and help our coaches too, handle different situations that will arise and develop new initiatives that are important to the development of our coaches and our student athletes. And over the last few years, we've been able to have initiatives that include our Titan Mindset, which is a sports psychology and sports programming to help our student athletes understand the challenges and different things and how to cope with things that will happen throughout a competition, and give them the tools they need to be successful mentally on the court or field of play. And then also providing more mental health resources for our student athletes and our coaches to be able to help our student athletes by developing a care team, and then also a guide to kind of help our coaches identify issues that students may be having, so we can get them the proper help and need that they have if they are suffering from some issues or need some assistance there. And then we've also added some first year student athlete development series, which can be an array of different things to help our student athletes, especially the first as they come into a new setting and go from high school to college, to help them acclimate to college life and then college athletics as well. We also have provided lunch and learns, which is professional development for our coaches, an athletic department library, which will have different motivational books or different books that they can check out and read to help them work with their student athletes better. And then also a committee and initiatives with athletics and diversity and athletics too, that help us in that area to make sure that we're being inclusive and really growing our department in many different ways. So,
one thing I'll jump in here, Mike. The one thing that we forgot to include on this is the ongoing academic support we provide for all the student athletes as well. And one of the things to really consider is, when you saw the initial slide that showed back in 1992, we're talking about maybe 270 student athletes and representing 18% of the student body. And it's not that the success of those students was not important in terms of providing additional academic support, maintaining retention with those student athletes, but that affected roughly 18% of the population. Now you can understand the responsibility that falls on our athletic department and our coaches today, when that cohort is over 600 students and represents 41% of the student population. So making sure that those students are receiving all the different types of support that they need. And they receive those from other offices on our campus and different departments that do a great job and are focused in those areas as well. But athletics has always viewed that extra bit of support coming from the coaches who are very active in these student athletes' lives and play a big role in terms of mentorship while they're here. And so in terms of their perseverance through to graduation, to maintaining a strong academic health, strong mental health, that has really become very, very important for us to make sure that we're not letting things fall through the cracks in athletics, knowing again that it represents such a large portion of our overall student enrollment on campus right now that we really had to kind of beef up what we've done to make sure that we're complementing what else is being done on campus for overall student success.
Yep. You know, in regards to facilities, as I mentioned earlier, that the Shirk Center was really, you know, what kicked off the growth for Titan Athletics. And, you know, back in 1992, we had two separate buildings, both Fred Young Fieldhouse and the Memorial Gym, where our men's and women's coaches and staff were separated. And you know, even in Fred Young Fieldhouse, you know, my first office back in 1992 was in a janitor's closet, and I shared it with another coach, with one of our assistant football coaches, Mike Murray. And you know, now to have the Shirk Center has you know, really helped us grow our staff. And as I mentioned, you know, with the thought of it being where we would, you know, be in this building for at least 50 years before we had to do anything. And then, you know, 8 years ago, we had to build an expansion onto Shirk. And now with the additional sports and student athletes, and again, as Tony mentioned, over 600 now, you know, we're using every nook and cranny of this building to its fullest capability and capacity to make sure that we're, you know, able to provide all the opportunities for our student athletes and coaches, both for office space, practice space, learning space, and all of that. So, but again, without the Shirk Center, everything that we have today wouldn't be possible. You can see a photo that was taken here of the Shirk Center, the main arena, again, where our men's and women's basketball, men's and women's volleyball all compete as their main gym right now. We were able to add new video boards this past fall, which has been an outstanding addition just to the event experience. One of the things that, you know, we were able to do now is not only to, you know, have in-game actions and in-game data with stats and all that in there, but also the opportunity to make sure that when we do recognitions for alumni or students that are student athletes that have done great things, you know, we're able to use those video boards to provide, you know, pictures and history of what happened and all that. You know, for instance, at the Jack Sikma opening Hall of Fame tournament, we were able to recognize all of our past basketball All-Americans for men's basketball and put up video clips of them while they were wearing the Titan uniform and show that as they were introduced and walked out to the floor, which again, I think really added to the not only the fan experience, but the alumni and student athlete experience too in that venue. That venue has been host to four actually national championships. We've hosted 2 women's volleyball national championships and 2 women's basketball national championships, and we'll be hosting the 2025 women's volleyball national championships again on our campus and in the Shirk Center main arena.
I'll jump in, Mike. I mean, one of the things that I thought about this after we had already put our presentation together today, you know, the one thing we didn't include on this was talking about the rebranding that we went through in athletics. About 4 or 5 years ago, once I came back down to the athletic department, we decided that we needed to look at an update in our branding, primarily because with the online presence for the athletic department with live stats and a lot of the graphics works and graphics packages, you know, we kind of noticed that our graphics and our athletic branding, which had never been really kind of looked over and consolidated before. We had so many different logos floating out there, so many different fonts that were used, that we really needed a comprehensive branding kind of redo. And so part of what we've done is kind of start to convert that over. You see that online. We've done that throughout the facilities here on campus. Mike had a great idea in the Shirk Center. If you look around the walls, those used to just be plain white sound panels around there. And Mike, along with Katie Gonzalez, who is the director of our sports communication program, figured out ways that we now wrap those soundboards with different things. So the gray panels at the far end of the court have the conference down there, and we'll be adding our conference accomplishments and standings to a couple of those boards down there. But the far corner, every Order of Titans since the beginning of the Order of Titans, I think the earliest is early 1920s or 30s maybe. Every Order of Titan recipient is listed in that gym. We have all of our academic All-Americans recognized now in the arena. Our championship teams are recognized. And we've got another section you can't see on this photo that talks about Titan Trailblazers, the first to accomplish a certain recognition, within the athletic department at Illinois Wesleyan University. So these spaces that, we're fortunate that we have an endowment for the Shirk Center through the Shirk family, Shirk Family Foundation, and that allows us to actually continually upgrade and make changes to these buildings that otherwise would not be possible. It was a very smart thing that the Shirk family decided they wanted to do. That's why we have people walk into a 30-year-old facility and if we say it was, opened in 1994, they're like, what? They think it's maybe a 15-year-old facility. And that's due in large part to, like I said, the support we get from the Shirk family and for the hard work Mike and athletics and people over the years have put into making sure that, we figure out ways to make the facility more engaging, obviously more useful from an athletic standpoint, but also keeping up with the times and the changes in what both fans and athletes are expecting.
The Shirk Activity Center, next photo there, that was actually, Tony brought up a great point, the Shirk Foundation. Back in 2011, we needed to resurface the indoor track facility. And, that's a cost that's pretty astronomical if you've ever worked with that. And the ability to use the funds from that Shirk endowment to resurface the facility, really helped us with the events that we're able to host in here, a better surface for our track and field athletes to reduce injury, and also obviously to give an upgrade too, actually for a better look as well. And this photo was actually taken from the expansion of Shirk that happened 8 years ago. As we mentioned before, with all the increase in numbers, we were able to add 5 locker rooms, a storage room, 2 multi-purpose rooms, another fitness center, some more public restrooms. The storage area, any of those that have ever built or been a part of a building project, the first thing that gets cut is usually storage. And so with this expansion, we were able to add a little bit more storage for different equipment and things like that. So it's not out in the facility, so we can better use all the space that we have in the activity center. And it's a great use of the fund that we have there to make sure that the facility stays one of the best in the nation as well. As our sport offering grows, as the facility gets older, and to make sure that it's still useful for current and future generations of Titans and people in the community as well. Tucci Stadium, you can send a photo there. We replaced the turf back in 2020 from the initial turf back in 2011. You can also see the photo there that the track, we resurfaced the track also in 2020, which was much needed. The previous surface that was on there was over 20 years old, and we really couldn't host any meets or do anything else, and now we'll be able to do that. Tucci Stadium itself, for those that may or may not know, the stands part was built in, the stadium part was built in 1937. And so we're seeing some wear and tear there, and we'll talk a little bit later about some future hopes in regards to Tucci Stadium. But we're very blessed to be able to have the turf field now to accommodate the 130 plus football players that we have, the 50 plus men's lacrosse players that we have, the 20 plus women's lacrosse, plus all the intramurals and non-traditional sports that use it, men's, women's soccer, and everything else. So it's been a great facility for us, but at some point there may be some need for some upgrades or renovations to that space. So Hornberger Field, built back in 1999. For those older alums, you may recall that we used to share the baseball field, used to be on where Tucci Stadium and Wilder Field is now. And every year we had to convert it back and forth between baseball and football. Used to use that as a great tool for football with the mound. being around the 20-yard line and, sending DBs in a back pedal over the mound so they can trip and our receivers can get open, home field advantage. But having the new space, again, with the vision of Coach Hornberger and then also the Shirk family to help with a lead gift to build that stadium. And it served us really well. But this last summer, or last spring, we were able to put in a new turf infield, which really has elevated the facility and the playability of it, and just the general use. So a lot less rainouts. The very opening day that we had last year on the first home game as a conference game against North Central, it rained pretty much all day, and we were able to have the game at night, where in the past that game probably would have been canceled or postponed. But we've done some other renovations out there with some new seating to replace some of the old chairback seating, and hope to have some more future plans to keep upgrading that space. But again, very blessed to have Hornberger Field and for our baseball program and our 50+ baseball student athletes that utilize that, and then the community use for youth baseball that uses that over the summer months as well has been great.
I told Mike, I said, I wish we had a little better picture of that, because actually when that picture was taken early spring, and so the grass hadn't quite greened up. But when that outfield, it's obviously natural grass in the outfield and artificial on the infield. But when we get into the late spring and even through the summer, that grass greens up, the transition from the field to the outfield isn't quite as noticeable. It's a really beautiful complex and plays fantastic.
Yeah. The Blakeman Golf Center, we were able to build that a few years ago, and actually the year after we built that, we have 2 TrackMan units and bays in there, and some lockers and a lounge area. Our men's golf team went on to win the national championship right after we built that facility. And then we're excited to announce that right next to it, we'll be doing an expansion here soon to the facility with the Wheatrick Putting Center, and then a couple more bays and more lockers and all of that to support our 30+ men's and women's golfers that we have in the program now.
As an example, the kind of facility needs and as programs change, as we had men's and women's golf programs that were probably at the time consistently ranked in the top 10%. And if they wanted to hit golf balls over the winter, they were in the basement of Tucci Stadium, where we would take like the defensive meeting room under there, hang a bunch of temporary netting, and say a couple prayers that the balls wouldn't get out of the netting and ricochet across all the concrete that was down there. You had a couple of heaters up there because it would get down into the 50s, and so these were 2 top-notch programs where our student athletes were completely limited by what they could do during the off-season portion, where it was still obviously very important to keep their skills sharp. Now, I won't say we thought that we would build a facility in the very first year it would result in a national championship, but that was a rare circumstance where those 2 teams were really poised, to do great things, and just hadn't gotten over that hump, even though they've been in the top 10 and done well on a national level. But Coach Ott told the story of when in 2019, when the men won their first national championship, that several coaches would come up and just comment about how clean and consistent all of his players' ball striking was throughout the entire tournament. That it was incredible how consistent they were. And Coach Ott said he had no doubt that was a direct benefit of having this indoor facility where our golfers kept their swing, their ball contact, kept everything nice and consistent. So when it was time to go outside and play the spring season and head into the national tournament, it provided that extra boost they needed. So that's a thing where you had the synergy of donors and coaches and student athletes and administrators coming together to plan something that had an immediate and dramatic impact on the success of that program.
Yeah, I would say a very similar thing that occurred when we opened up the Shirk Center back in again, 94, 95. And then a couple years later, our men's basketball, we were always on that cusp of winning a national championship and really close. And then that facility really helped us. The Shirk Center helped us get us over the edge in that arena to win the national championship in 97 with Coach Bridges and that team. Inspiration Field, we made some major upgrades to the facility itself by building a batting facility with 6 bays out there with lights and nets that we can also have hitting and pitching in there right next to the softball field. And, and that was all thanks to a very generous donation from Carol Willis, class of 68, that is helping us with this. Proud to help us with that project. And then we are hosting the 2025 national championships for softball, Division III. And we're excited about that. And, we'll discuss this in a little bit, but we have some planned upgrades to that facility as well as we get to that 2025 hosting of a national championship. And you'll be able to get to represent Bloomington Normal and Illinois Wesleyan with the top 8 teams from across the country of Division III as they compete for the national championship. So we're excited about that opportunity here in a few years. Upcoming projects, and I led right into it then, the renovation of Inspiration Field with the plan of this summer. We already have the funding. We're going to be putting a new turf infield on that field this summer. Then with plans of adding a new scoreboard out there. The original scoreboard is still out there from when we built it back in 2000 when we opened the facility. And then we also need to have some expanded bleacher seating and press box space for when we host that, and not only for the national championships, but with the success of our softball program, and they made it to 4 straight national championship series for Division III, and continue to have success there. Our crowds at games are pretty packed, and we need to be able to expand upon that, and for the media requests and the live streaming and all of that. So we're excited about the renovations that will be coming forward for that space. As we mentioned before, the Blakeman Golf Center expansion with the additional golfers that we have, and the ability and the need to support all of them and their space in the wintertime, and to support, again, 2 programs that have grown and had a lot of success. We're excited about that. Expanding into a second racquetball court, which racquetball is a fun sport, but it's just not as not as much participation in that, and to really be able to help our teams out made us decide to go ahead and do that. I'm also excited to announce that we're going to have an expanded partnership with Evergreen Racquetball Club, where they're going to become a partner for us for not only our indoor but outdoor facilities as well for competition. And we'll still have Beatles Morse Court for some practices. But we're looking forward at that to have a first-class facility for our tennis programs. And then we're also working on, due to a generous gift, to upgrade our women's soccer locker room. That was one of the few locker rooms that we haven't upgraded on the west side of the Shirk Center, where all of our older, where the space is at from the original building. We've upgraded the men's, women's basketball locker room, the football locker room, the women's volleyball, and did a little bit of improvement to the current men's volleyball and soccer. Men's soccer, but the next project will be for the women's soccer before we maybe do some other upgrades to the others, and then we'll start working on the east side later on. But that's one of the older locker rooms and most outdated locker room, and again, we got a generous donation for that to be able to complete that project as well. Tony, anything else you'd like to add there for those?
No, I didn't know. I mean, for anyone, you might be curious, the Blakeman expansion is going to include 2 more hitting bays, including 1 more simulator. So we've got simulators, projection units where you can play different golf courses, but it also gives you a lot of analytical data back on the golfer's swing. For those whose games are good enough, information you can use them, like Mike and I were just kind of see it, hit it, and then also a putting green. There's a putting green in there, and it's roughly, I forget what it is, Mike, 25 by about 15 or so. And it's got a putt view system that kind of shoots lasers onto the putting surface and kind of assists with the consistency of putting and chipping. And so it's a little bit of a different, it provides some of the same, an expansion of what we had so that there's more access to the hitting base for both the men and women's golfers, but adding that extra dimension of a putting training facility along with some other seating and locker room space. All the golfers didn't even have their own dedicated locker. for storing, clubs and other equipment and so forth. So that's essentially what's going into that space.
Yep. We added a little bit of a wish list here. One of the things that, as I mentioned earlier, Tucci Stadium has been around for a long time, and what we're going to need as we add more sports, add more things, and be able to maybe use that as a part of an expansion with the wrestling to hopefully be able to put that on campus here soon for their practice facility. It's again, it's a beautiful and historic facility, but with the expansion and growth of all the teams, we're definitely going to need some more space and be able to have more amenities, just to be able to fit, this athletic communication staff, video live streaming, which has grown exponentially over the last 10 years, and the radio coverage and visiting teams and all that kind of stuff. We're going to need some extra space, to be able to accommodate that, and to be able, to be honest, to maybe even catch up with a lot of the other programs, with not only within our conference but our peer aspect group that have built and improved their stadiums over the last 10-15 years, which we have not yet. Plan again to hopefully soon build a wrestling facility on campus, upgrades to nice field with maybe adding some restrooms and new surface and change into the press box out there. And then again, with the addition of multi-sports over the winter months, when we first started, we only had men's and women's basketball. Indoor track really wasn't a big thing back in the early 90s. We had a little bit of practice with not many meets, and also we had men's and women's swimming and diving, and so the facility stress wasn't much. And now with men's and women's volleyball and the non-traditional seasons, plus adding men's and women's wrestling, we're going to need some potential more space, gym space, and all of that. So we are looking at, potentially adding on to Solberg Court at some time down the road, as those opportunities arise for us to be able to do so. I'm going to talk a little bit about budgets and resources. I think we've always been very, and I learned this from Coach Bridges before, as being, whether you want to call it frugal or thrifty or whatever, but we've always gotten a lot out of the budgets and the resources that we have been handed to us. And to be honest, about 8 years ago when I first started, we were one of the last in the conference in dollars spent per student athlete, and then also the number of coaches and human resources that we also had on our campus. We were one of the dead last in our conference, in our peer aspirant group. And due to some initiatives that Tony will talk about here in a second, we've been able to climb that ladder a little bit and be able to provide better experiences, better resources, better opportunities for our student athletes and coaches to make sure that they have all the tools and things that they need to be as successful as they possibly can, and both, again, on and off the court. And so our budgets, through the university, with our numbers increasing, and then also through the generous donations of a couple funds that we started, we've slowly been able to add to our staff and add to our budgets, which again has really, I believe, over the years, really made a difference now in the student athletes' experiences and what we're able to provide, to them when they are a Titan student athlete. And a lot of that has been through a lot of our alums that maybe didn't have those same resources, back when they were here. And I think they want to see things better, for this current generation and future generations. And they've been very, very giving, and it's made such a huge difference in what we've been able to provide over the last several years. And I'll let Tony go ahead and kind of take over from here in regards to some of our fundraising that we've been able to start over the last few years.
Yeah, and we started off this presentation talking about the growth in sheer numbers, from 273 student athletes or thereabouts in 1992 to having over 623 here in 2022, and going from 18% of the student population to 41% of the total student population. Let's just say budget growth has not been as exponential as the growth in student athletes, and that's a byproduct of what's happening in higher education today. that again, colleges are having to find ways to be as frugal as possible in many cases to make sure that the investment of dollars, that costs are being controlled to a certain degree. And so much of the challenge, I mean, I know Mike's had years where we've actually added sports and the operational budget for athletics has not really increased, right? So you're actually trying to figure out in some cases how to do more with the same amount of money, which can really spread those resources a little bit thinner. This is nothing, specific to athletics. Academic departments and student services and other departments on college campuses deal with the same thing. We all feel like we're having to provide more with maybe at best, resources that are staying relatively the same. One of the things that has really helped with us to maintain the level of excellence and success that people have come to expect with Titan Athletics was the formation of the Titan Athletic Fund in the fall of 2016. When I came to athletics, Mike says, well, I've got two little things that I'd like you to do. I want you to completely redo the branding for athletics and to start a brand new fundraising component for athletics. So, two really easy things. Replace a beloved Tommy Titan mascot, and with all of our alumni and try to find ways to get some more resources in the door. So to be honest, though, the support in both of those endeavors has really been great. The difference for those who may not be familiar with the history of fundraising is in the past, prior to 2016, individuals could designate gifts to athletics. Those gifts were not always what we would like to say additive. In other words, money on top to a particular budget. In some cases, what it might do is replace monies that were going to be already designated to that sport, and that would free up those resources then possibly, if it was unrestricted, to be used elsewhere on campus, since it didn't have to kind of come down to athletics. One of the things that Mike and I talked about to the university, to the advancement department and division here at Illinois Wesleyan, was the importance of being able to solicit gifts that would be additive to the program. That in some cases, again, we're receiving an operational budget to run the programs, but to actually make improvements and to keep up with what we need to competitively, it was going to require additional resources. We wanted to make sure that we weren't, robbing from Peter to pay Paul, that we weren't taking away donors from the Wesleyan Fund, which is still crucially important for the institution. As our coaches will often tell their donors, our student athletes are like any other students at Illinois Wesleyan. They require financial support for financial aid, for scholarships, and for grants. They benefit from academic support that comes in through the Wesleyan Fund. So for anyone who's been donating the Wesleyan Fund, we always say it's still vitally important that you continue to support the Wesleyan Fund. But for those that are considering maybe an additional gift, or maybe those who haven't been giving to the university because they haven't quite found something that spoke to their particular interest, the Titan Fund was able to help us generating funds that would be additive above and beyond, that would enhance the nutrition, the training, the travel accommodations, and so forth for our student athletes. So you can see since 2016, we've generated a little bit over $1.5 million to date in the 6.5 years since we have started the Titan Athletic Fund. Our all-in day every year is a really big part of that. We've had a great response to that. We see increases each year. And I would easily say we'd be nowhere near the level of success that we are today if it had not been for, I think, for the formation of the Titan Athletic Fund and what that continues to do. Every little bit that comes in, it can be to the general Titan Athletic Fund, which are funds that are available to Mike to then disseminate throughout the department where it's needed most. But donors can also give specifically to a sport, if it wants to be women's tennis, if it's men's lacrosse, or whatever the case might be. And those funds are actually what, like I said, is taking us from running a program to creating an exceptional program. It's really that good to great that it really helps with them. We could not do that without our donors. The other interesting component that we were able to start and announce in the fall of 2020 is the Legends Endowment for Athletic Excellence. And for some of our alumni, you'll recognize many of the faces on that plaque with Coach Hornberger and Coach Bridges, Coach Keck, Barb Cothran, Swede Larson, Don Larson there, and Edgar Alcine. And really what we felt is, these individuals played such a huge role in really establishing what has become to be known as the Illinois Wesleyan athletics program. And we want to be able to continue that into the future. The simple explanation for how endowments work is you kind of have a big lump of money. And to make the math easy, if we have $700,000 in an endowment and you get 10% return because that money is invested, mutual fund or a typical money market varying account. If you make 10% off of that, you take 5% and put it back in the fund. So if we made $70,000 off of that 700,000, 35,000 would go back into the fund. So now the fund is worth 735,000. And then the annual spin-off for athletic spending is 35,000. So Mike gets 35,000 from that endowment fund that he can then utilize. As you can imagine, as that fund continues to grow, if you have $1 million fund and eventually goes to $1.5 million or $2 million, that continues in perpetuity to spin off resources for the athletic department. So you're not spending down that amount. You're able to have it continue to grow and even increase the amount that is being afforded for the athletic department. So we have these two things working in conjunction. The Titan Athletic Fund is an annual fund that creates revenue, and then the endowment also has some spinoff that's utilized on an annual basis, but it's long-term, creating a source of resources for the athletic department. Why is all of this important? The investment in facilities and the fundraising and having excellent programs. It's really based in the results that we see for our student athletes. Mike and I will often talk to our student athlete recruits and their parents. And what we tell them is we love trophies, we love winning, all that is great. But our primary function is really to utilize athletics as simply another tool to help develop 18 to 22-year-old young people, right? And we know all these great intangibles that come from participation in athletics, how to overcome adversity, how to be a leader, how to work in a group setting. We know that once their playing days are over to Illinois Wesleyan and they go on to pursue a career, or they become mothers or fathers, and start a family or community members, all these different hats they will wear. We know the valuable lessons they learn through their participation with athletics are going to pay off for them in the long term to help them be successful as well. We see some of that while they're here, not only to the student athlete experience, but the fact that we continue to remain in the top 25 of all NCAA schools, Division 1, 2, or 3, and producing academic All-Americans, again, creating that perfect marriage of athletics and academics. We just celebrated 50 years of Title IX. We've seen the incredible impact that has had at Illinois Wesleyan University. We have now had several Women of the Year finalists for NCAA based on the quality of female leaders that we are producing and the success they're enjoying. And we see that continue once they leave Illinois Wesleyan University for all of our student athletes, their future career success. And within the communities, not just talking about somebody who is part of a community, but someone who tries to be a leader and a difference maker in the communities that they join as well. And so that student athlete experience, certainly, like I said, we love to compete, love to win, but it's about showing, creating that level of excellence that our student athletes strive for, understanding the hard work that goes into producing those types of results, and then carrying that work ethic forward into their future lives and what other, endeavors they may pursue down the road.
Yep, thank you. And Kaylee, I think we are ready for questions if there are any out there.
Yeah, Mike, I saw one in the chat. Maybe you can touch on it. I know somebody wanted to know, the one thing we didn't touch on, and it's in the athletic training area, but the changes between 1992 and now and what we do for health and safety for our student athletes and the work that the athletic training department does.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I'm very proud of is not only our staff and who they are as people, but, where the university has been in regards to supporting that. As we've been growing, we maybe have had less coaches and some less in a lot of our departments than some other programs. But one of the areas that we've been very strong in is our sports medicine staff and the care that we give our student athletes. We started way back in 92, we had one athletic trainer and maybe a GA, or not even a GA, but a part-time person, and now we have 4 full-time and 4 GAs and 2 athletic training rooms, and it's grown. They are a huge reason of why we have the success that we've had, and the university has been very supportive of them. And to be honest, it's necessary. We need to be able to keep our student athletes healthy, both physically and mentally, make sure they recover, after practices or injury, or prevent injuries. And, Dr. Bill Kauth, and he's been with us, about 28 years now, and his entire staff have been amazing at just, again, caring, for our student athletes, for their well-being, and the opportunities that we have with just some of the equipment and the modalities that we're able to have in our spaces now to treat them and to care for them. We travel all of our athletic trainers to our away events, and not everybody does that, but it's important to make sure that they're getting proper, consistent care for people that know them and know their injuries and know how to help them out. And that came about through some different things that happened. We didn't used to travel our athletic trainers all the time on some of our trips, and we had some student athletes get injured and didn't have the proper care at the facility that we were at. And to ensure that moving forward, we were able to do that. And again, some of that has been able, not only from the university standpoint, but we've been able to fund a lot of that, through some of the generous donations that we've gotten through the Titan Fund and all that, to make sure that we can afford and make it a priority to send our athletic trainers on all the trips and give them, again, all the things that they need to make sure they care for our Titan student athletes.
I remember this too, Mike. We had talked about this when we talked about putting the presentation together, and you touched on it briefly. But one thing that has changed also from 92 to today is the addition of the non-traditional seasons in the NCAA versus just a traditional season. So some of us that have been student athletes in the past, you had your traditional season, soccer or basketball or whatever, baseball, and it was pretty much your competitive season, and then the rest was off season. Now there are organized non-traditional seasons for essentially every sport. And so all of our spring sports are active in the fall with their non-traditional season. All of our fall sports are active in the spring with, a non-traditional season, which typically covers, you have 15 dates, practice dates that you can spread out over a certain number of weeks. But they'll have scrimmages and those types of things as well. So that's put a greater need on the types of facilities that we have, on the resources, on the athletic training that Mike just talks about, because when those students are in the non-traditional and even out of season, student athletes are constantly, when they're out of season, they're still doing a lot more strength and conditioning these days in the off season than we ever did 30 years ago. And so our athletic trainers are having to support that effort as well. So all of this ramping up of students training now at a Division III athletic program, much like they might have done at a Division I level in years past, it has become a little bit more similar to that schedule, even though their practice schedules and requirements may not be what you have at the Division I level, but their commitments as serious athletes is certainly on par with that.
Yeah, and I guess I can see these questions now. I missed that button there. So one of the questions here is how are the trips overseas by Titan teams funded? Especially like women's basketball team played in Italy while men was in Greece. So those are treated just like any study abroad trip that any of our students may have are on campus. They're all funded by the families and the student athletes themselves and the parents. And they may be able to do some fundraising through grandparents and friends or some businesses back in their local hometowns and stuff like that to be able to fund that. But there isn't any funding from the university in regards to those trips. Again, just because it's very similar, treated very similar to any type of study abroad trip, or going over to take any classes in a different country that we have, through those programs.
Yeah, Mike, I'll take the one. And Joni Gilbert, appreciate you pointing out about KD Gonzalez and the incredible team, Nicole Remedios, and the job that they do. It was something, again, that Mike touched on that I'm like, we should have done a quick slide about. There's so many things to update over 30 years, right? But streaming sports. We stream over 100 athletic events a year, easy. and that takes quite a bit of work. We now have a full-time, a dedicated staff member, Tyler Wilson, who can help coordinate the streaming. Some schools will, shop that out. They'll pay anywhere from $30,000 to $50,000 a year to some external vendor to stream all of their events. We do all of that in-house. That is all done by us. We've developed it over the years. We've tried to make it better. We've gone from 1 camera to 3 camera and graphics packages and all kinds of stuff. But that takes a whole nother level of coordination. All of the games not only have the video component to it, but then Katie and her staff are live statting everything. So you get instant, in-game, updated statistics. They do a great deal with the social media and graphics packages and taking all the students' promotional video and promotional photos. And it's just, everything has just blown up, like I said. And part of this is enhances the student athlete experience, and it's also to provide an athletic experience that, again, students are experiencing more and more at other places. People now expect us to stream. I have to remind people that we're not a major network, so we have a camera go down. We need a little grace and patience to allow us, because that's literally somebody trying to figure out, why the camera we're using. But we're not NBC or ESPN or anybody like that. But we're proud of the job that streaming staff has done and what we've developed over the years, for sure.
Yeah, and it's great to be able to reach out to our alumni and fans of the university and friends. And again, as Tony mentioned, Katie Gonzalez and her staff does a great job, not only with the live streaming, but the social media and the website. And really, we had a unbelievable, 2 sports information directors, athletic communication directors prior to Katie Gonzalez with Ed Alcine and Stu Salowitz. And, she's been able to take, the new age and the new technologies that we've had and really advanced what we're able to do from, the coverage and everything for our student athletes and again, our fans and alumni of the university. So, a couple things in here I can answer real quick. For wish list items, the athletic department have cost estimates. Each coach will usually put out a wish list in newsletters and different things to their teams and stuff like that, on what they're hoping to get and what they're able to do and what they've done in the past with some of the money that they've raised on All In Day and the Titan Athletic Fund and all of that kind of stuff. So, usually we allow the coaches to be able to work through that with their alumni base and all of that. And then obviously, for the athletics department overall, anything that comes in goes to some of the priorities that we have at that moment. When it comes to coaching staffs, here's a question: how do you determine the number of coaches required for a specific sport? Is that simply based on funding as well? Some of it is based on funding, and some of it is based on roster sizes. And then also, from an equitable standpoint, do we have the resources to be able to cover both a full-time assistant coach or, part-time assistant coaches for both the men's sport and women's sport? And also, what is historically out there? What do other programs have for that, comparable sport? Within our conference, within our peer aspirant group, which is a group of 20 universities that the University of Illinois Wesleyan compares themselves to. So we look at all that to see where our growth would be and where we need it. And it's a process here. I would love to be able to add full-time staff every single year as our staffs or as our programs have grown and as our numbers have grown within each program. But it is a strategic, both for, from the standpoint of what we can do and what we have, and where are we getting our part-time coaches from? For example, lacrosse. It's growing in the Midwest, and it's really exploding in the Midwest. But to find qualified assistant coaches that live here that maybe want to be part-time assistant coaches is way different than maybe baseball or volleyball or something like that, where it's been, those sports have been played here in the Midwest forever. There's just a history of it is not as big for lacrosse and a few other sports. So, we really look at it and we try and grow and try to add to it each year. And we continue to do that. And that's what we're actually in the process now of trying to figure out what the next steps are for some of our programs in regards to adding sports. And, and each one's different and each is unique. And again, you look at lacrosse again, and, it's nice to have an offense and a defensive coordinator, just like you have in football. a pitching coach in baseball, a pitching coach in softball, and that's such a huge need, besides the head coach. And if the head coach doesn't have that experience, to be able to have somebody that can fill that role. So there's a lot of thoughts and a lot of ways that go into how we hire. It definitely has to do a lot with funding, but it also goes with the greatest needs and what we can find throughout other resources to be able to fill some of those needs temporarily until we can make something full time.
And then you jumped into that question real quick, and I was going to go back to the previous one about funding too that we had. Sometimes it's about matching donor interest to a particular project. Sometimes a project has come about based on a donor that says, "I'd like to make a gift of approximately this size. What are some things that we could do for that would be impactful?" And then Mike and I can certainly come up with different ideas. And sometimes that's a need that we have. Sometimes it's a need of the donor. Sometimes we'll have a project that we know that we need to get done, and typically we'll need a pretty significant lead gift. Usually, if you can get a major gift that covers about half of that cost, then you go out with your fundraising and people fundraising over the top of that. So we've had $100,000 campaigns where we've gone out and received a $50,000 lead gift, and then you cobble together 10 or 15, and then it goes all the way down to $100 gifts for people that want to be involved in that campaign. There are some large scale projects. We know that putting turf down on the soccer field and a new sub level and then turf, it's about $1 million project. We know if we wanted to add full-time amenities out there for restrooms and concessions and those types of things, you're talking about another $800,000 or $1 million, depending on, again, how much. Usually what Mike will do, and the stadium's the same way, Mike, I don't know if you can speak to it. I mean, looking at the stadium work that we would have to do out at the football field to kind of make that a new modern stadium. Mike's got to come up with, here's what we could do for $7 million. Here's what we could do for 10 or 12 or 15. I mean, those stadium projects are probably 10 to 15 million now. The Shirk Center we built for roughly 15 million in 1994. This facility would probably cost 50 to 60 million dollars if you were to build it today. Yeah. And so sometimes it's stuff we know we need, and we can go and do the homework and figure out finding out the cost on it is the first step. And then, having donors that step in. But sometimes it's a passion project for a donor that says, "Hey, this is something I'd really like to get involved with." And we really enjoy those conversations, but it is really a two-way conversation.
Another question on here is, what is the university doing to try and attract more students, enrollment? Some of that is by adding more sports and opportunities. I think the other part is, we're going through a process right now of really looking at, and President Nugent and the rest of cabinet, we're really looking at adding more majors and more opportunities and reimagining some different departments on campus, which hopefully some new and exciting things will be announced here soon. Anybody that's been involved with higher education knows that some of those things move a little bit slower than what a lot of us would like, but there are some great things that are happening, from our faculty and our administration to provide opportunities, to provide majors and provide things that, the students want in this new day and age. And, there'll be some new things that, again, that'll be hopefully announced soon that will definitely attract a lot more students to campus, and so everybody gets the opportunity to experience what we have to offer here. One of the things that has been so great about Illinois Wesleyan is the liberal arts education being a part of the professional programs and the learning experience, no matter whether you were going into business or pre-med or whatever it may be, as a part of the whole. And I think we can do that for many of the new majors that we're looking at adding to, and that usually sets us apart from many other universities and sets our students, our future students, and when they go into their careers, above and beyond what a lot of institutions can provide as well. So we're looking forward to adding those as we add more sports and add more other opportunities. One of the things that we didn't mention, we added esports several years ago, which is not part of athletics, is a part of Dean of Students, but that's generated, 80 or so, more students for us within that program. And maybe I'm low on that number, but it's generated quite a bit. So, we're doing a lot of things as a university to try and increase enrollment, and we'll continue to do so. And so we can remain healthy and continue to grow as we move forward here. I don't see any other questions on there, Kaylee.
Yeah. Thank you both so much for going through those. And thank you so much for taking time to talk through everything that's happening with Titan Athletics and the exciting opportunities heading our way. If anyone has additional questions or comments, maybe you're interested in one of those wish list items, you can certainly reach out to Mike or Tony and shoot them an email. We'll send that along in the that goes along with the recording. And again, thank you all so much for attending today. Look for that recording that will come through your emails, and please join us for another Titan Talk somewhere along the 2023 year. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.